The comment about Kuminga and specifically leading him on the podcast P with Paul George, Draymond certainly insinuates that he needs a little help figuring out that whole process.
I actually look forward to learning this from him. I think Chris Paul will completely unlock Jonathan Kuminga and his growth.
Mm-hmm.
CP is great with young guys.
Mm-hmm.
DeAndre Ayton looked like a bust before CP came to Phoenix.
Facts.
No disrespect to Ayton, but more so a nod to CP.
Yeah.
Like,
More of a threat.
people didn't know what they were like, what DeAndre Ayton was going to turn out to be, and then CP went there, and all of a sudden
Turned him
DeAndre
up.
Ayton became an all-star level player.
Right.
And so I think what he will do for Jonathan Kuminga and unlocking Kuminga is huge.
Amazing.
Absolutely huge. And I look forward to learning that from him. He's always been incredible at mentoring young guys. And that is an area that I've wanted to grow in because it's one that I kind of got thrusted into.
Wow. I find that to be a fascinating bit of commentary right there from Draymond Green.
It's a nice, honest reveal in terms of areas where he thinks that he needs to improve, mentoring young people.
Chris Paul, you and I both agreed that day when the news broke, when we were on our way to Chase Center, I remember the conversation we had about today's a great day for Jonathan Kuminga.
Yes.
We sat there and we didn't really know yet, was Kuminga going to be traded next? So I think we tiptoed into it a little bit, but I certainly understood the idea of if a guy is running the second unit and he's a pass-first player and he's a veteran, he's a smart player, and he's not looking to break everybody down and get to the rim and do all of that, that's great for Jonathan Kuminga. So it sounds like Draymond agrees with us on that front. But the other side to it, admitting that there are maybe some mentoring tips that Draymond can get. I will say this, just based on what we've heard, as far as Jordan Poole's locker room friends, Andrew Wiggins was one of them.
Yeah.
But we've talked a lot about Kuminga and Moody and whatnot, looking at what Draymond did and going, gosh, there's probably some distrust there. So somewhere embedded in what he just said, I think he's sort of saying that as much as maybe he's had trouble unlocking Kuminga, I wonder if Kuminga even goes to him. If I'm a 20-year-old player and I see what he did to Jordan, I'm not going to Draymond. I'm not going there for help. Why would I go there?
Right. Especially when Draymond is a tough love kind of leader. And if you're Kuminga and you're making mistakes and Draymond's letting you hear about it, you're not going to be eager to go over there and try to buddy up to a guy who has been all over you for the mistakes you're making earlier in the year. And if you think about young players that Draymond's played with over the course of the last 5 years, there haven't really been that many that the Warriors have drafted who have stuck and really been players in the NBA. So it's not Draymond's fault that Jacob Evans was never an NBA player.
Right.
But to that point, Draymond hasn't had the opportunity to see a young player come up, get drafted, stick around, and be a part of the team other than Jordan Poole, and Draymond messed that up.
Yeah, well, and listen, we've talked about this so much. I know certainly that my stance is made clear that Draymond did nothing right that day in practice for sure. However, that was not ground zero. And for everybody who wants to take a side in what they perceive to be a Draymond versus Jordan Poole thing, I would say, why wouldn't you just look at the behavior of everybody who was on the team? Don't you ask yourself, why seemingly did most of the team take Draymond's side? Somewhere in there, isn't there a hidden reason
For
or
sure.
two? You know what I mean?
Ric Bucher on with Steiny and Guru earlier had a great answer. I don't know if you have it on your board.
Got it right here.
Okay, I don't want to overplay it because he's a fellow redhead. He's an alumnus here of 95.7 The Game.
Yep.
He was on the original lineup here with.
I love Rick. Yeah.
Actually, no, he was not in the original lineup. He came after after Brandon Tierney went back east. That's when Ric Bucher, when BT went back to the Big East.
Yep.
But Ric Bucher, I thought, had a very interesting comment on that very thing.
This is via Steiny and Guru on 95.7 The Game.
I do too, but I put that on Jordan Poole. Jordan was on a lot of players' nerves way before that, including Clay's and Steph's. And Draymond was finally the one who tipped the scales and went overboard. And I'm not defending at all what he did. But after he did it, Draymond tried everything possible to remedy that situation. And Jordan would have none of it. And I'm just looking at it as, Jordan, you have an opportunity to learn and exceed Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors, and a team that has put its eye on the prize of winning championships every chance they can. And you can't get over this situation with Draymond. When Draymond's going to be gone at some point, and this is going to be yours, you couldn't see the big picture, and instead remained difficult, made sure that elephant was still in the room. Look, the young guy, there's a part of me that understands. Maybe he just wasn't mature enough to get around that. But I look at it as, who did it cost the most? It cost Jordan Poole the most, as I look at it.
Yeah, he's exactly right. I mean, that's the way that I've seen this thing from the beginning, which is there's nothing anybody can say to make Draymond punching Jordan a good thing. But here's another way to ask it. Like, everyone go, oh, boy, he's going to average 27 a game next year. So what? Do you know who Jordan is now? He's exactly who you said he was going to be if he was still on the Warriors when Steph, Clay, and Dre retire. He is going to be the centerpiece of a 20-win team.
John Wall.
I mean, that's who he is.
Bradley Beal.
Jordan didn't win. Jordan's a wizard now. His best teammate is some guy named Kyle. Come on. He did not win.
Shout out Kyle's everywhere.
Yeah, I know a bunch of them. He didn't win. And he manifested this. I know that Draymond punched him, but there was a lot of time. There was a lot of time for this to go a number of different ways. And if this is what he wanted, then he got it. But I don't think that the grass is going to be greener. I'm starting to look at this and see some comps to Kevin Durant. He didn't get punched. He's a way better player and a bigger deal. And there were championships. But what have we all said about Kevin when he left? Like, I don't criticize the guy. You want something else, go do it. But what's he gotten since he left Golden State? It's a big old pile of nothing out there.
A lot of change of address forms.
Yeah, exactly. And Jordan probably will too, to be honest with you.
And we'll see. I mean, maybe Jordan goes and he averages 28 or 29 a game, and he goes out and he becomes a max player, and he goes and gets money that he wouldn't have gotten if he stayed with the Golden State Warriors, because over the next 3 years, he would not have been able to do enough as a Warrior to be a max player. So maybe he goes out and he is able to score enough, and he goes out and gets the bag that he really wants, and maybe he's happier now. We don't know that. The other part of the Ric Bucher answer that I wonder about, Rick says Draymond Green did everything in his power to make it right. I wonder what that is, because we have heard nothing in terms of what Draymond actually did to make it right, and I wonder if Jordan will ever speak to it. Draymond certainly won't, because Draymond's come out on the winning end of the breakup, but I wonder what Draymond actually did do to try to make it right, because that's a lot you have to do to try to make that right, and maybe Jordan wasn't receptive to any of it.
Yeah, we've wondered about it a lot. I remember, the conversation about, has he gone to his home? Has he gone to his parents? Has he,
Well,
whatever?
Draymond referenced his parents, and Draymond said, I know how my parents would feel.
Sure.
They'd be embarrassed. And so, for me, that would be part of this make good campaign. If, maybe Jordan's parents didn't want to hear from Draymond Green.
And maybe it was. We
don't know.
That's the thing. Like, I didn't ever think that we were going to get a play-by-play of what they were trying to do. But if we know anything about this organization and the way Draymond was talking, it's not like he spent the rest of the year going, and yeah, bleep you, Jordan.
Totally.
It was obvious that he was like, look, that was out of line, and we're going to try to work our way through it. And I think all of us wondered throughout the season, based on little things that we were seeing, we were wondering if there was any receptiveness to whatever they were trying to do. And there were moments where it was like, it doesn't look like it. You know what I mean? It is that famous, the end scene of Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
Like, we're now at the point where Kaiser Soze's leg is now not limping anymore. And you suddenly go, when Draymond walked off the court, and when Steph threw the mouthpiece, and when Jordan wouldn't talk to Draymond, and their road record, it all makes sense now. No, they never got over it. They never got over it. Not even close.
And Ric Bucher says that Draymond did everything in his power to make it good, and Jordan wasn't receptive to it. And, I take Rick at his word because he is an NBA insider, and he's been around this team and the association for 35 or so years. And so I don't think Rick would just report on that out of the ether because he's friends with Draymond or Draymond's camp. So I wonder what that looked like after the punch in terms of how Draymond was able to try to make it right and how resistant Jordan Poole was to that.
What do you think about everything we're listening to? And we'll take some calls on this. Those of you on hold, we're coming to here in just a sec. 888-957-9570. Everything we're listening to, because we have for years now just bought into Draymond's the leader of the Warriors. Draymond's the voice. Steph is the player. Clay's the second player. But Draymond's the voice, the heartbeat, the center, the core, the defense, all of that. Steiny asked this question earlier, and I think it's a really interesting one. We listened to all this, even his admission that he's not good in certain points of leadership, and it makes you think what? Like, Draymond the leader, good, bad, somewhere in between? What do you think?
Well, we have a poll on Twitter right now, and use one of your 600 views today and go ahead and vote on that poll before you get blocked out.
Okay.
Is Draymond Green a good leader? There's no in-between, Mark. We're a yes and no show here on Willard and Dibs. We want you to have to make a decision, either yes or no, and you know what? I voted no. I voted no because I think about the totality of what leadership is, and when you punch a teammate in the face and it never gets made better, that to me is not leadership. And when you get kicked out of a game and it costs you an NBA championship, that's not leadership. When you stomp on an opponent on his chest and you get suspended for a game, that's not leadership. Now, Draymond Green's a lot of things.
Success?
No, it's great.
Right.
His success is success. It doesn't mean that that's leadership.
Well, but I mean, we've credited so much of that to his leadership. And there has been so much success, and if he is often pointed out as somebody who, we look to this guy to either help our heartbeat or, the stories about like, man, it was the first quarter and I could tell like we mentally weren't where we needed to be. So I went out and got a technical or whatever, and it woke us up. That kind of stuff. And the players have said for years that that's helped us. And they've been so successful with it.
Right.
So there's got to be something in there that works.
Oh, there is, which is why the poll, and I'm looking at the results right now as they're coming in. And, we set this for 24 hours, so you've got all day to vote because that's what we do on our Twitter polls. 56% yes, 44% no.
Yeah.
So it is very split. I'm not alone in camp no.
It just went up because I just voted yes.
You did vote yes.
Yeah.
Of course you voted yes.
Well, but he
because
is.
you're down to just punch a guy if that's what it's going to take to lead.
Don't pin me into
I
that.
did that.
No,
Welcome back from Hawaii.
Because it does not
this is
say.
What we do.
It does not say is Draymond a perfect leader. It says is he a good leader.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's a good leader. He's not a perfect one. He makes more mistakes.
Well, nobody's a perfect leader. Nobody is a perfect leader.
I don't know. I mean, some people might have someone in their life who they feel has been perfect at it. But yeah, I don't think anybody's perfect at anything.
Correct.
Except for Kauai. It's perfect. But anyway, he's a good leader. He makes more mistakes. Like, I don't know if he's a great leader.
There you go.
He's a good one.
Parson words.
He makes more mistakes than I would like to see him make.
He's a good basketball player.
Yeah.
I would not say he's a good leader.
Interesting.
And I wonder if you did this poll for the under 23 crowd on the Golden State Warriors last year, how they would vote in terms of Moody, Kuminga, Rollins, PBJ, and Jordan Poole.
How do you think the guys who have been with him for a decade feel?
Right. And that's, to me, the interesting part about him as a good leader because, sure, you're good with the veterans and Steph and Clay, they know you, but if you're a young player, are you feeling the same way about Draymond Green as the vets? Because Draymond said in the podcast P clip that you played, he looks forward to learning from Chris Paul about how to mentor Jonathan Kuminga and some of the younger players.
You know what, though? Jordan Poole pointed to Draymond Green as big brother who took me under his wing when he was trying to get from the G League to a spot, and he became a $130 million player. So
because of Draymond's leadership?
No, but it had
because he was in the lab.
It had to be a piece. Like, I don't think all of the young players, I think you're making it sound like all the young players would say Draymond's a crappy leader.
No.
I don't think that at all.
I'm just saying that the veteran vote and the rookie vote would probably be pretty disparate.
What do you think Kevon Looney's vote would be? Because, by the way, as we all know, whatever that is, that's what we're going with.
Whatever Kevon thinks
Whatever
is exactly.
Kevon says is the right answer.
I think 57% of Kevon would say yes, and 43% of Kevon would say no.
Steve Kerr, right? I ride with Loon.
Totally.
That dude's the moral compass. That's my guy when it comes to an answer like this. What do you think he would vote?
If he had to click yes or no, he would probably click yes, I would guess.
Yeah,
just based on
too.
the fact that, playing with Draymond Green and being on Draymond's side is, it's worth millions. It's worth championships. Yeah. Draymond is one of the all-time greatest competitors in pro sports history. Yet his dark side can not only drive a teammate across the country, but he can cost you games. He can cost you championships.
See, now this is an interesting comment right here based on what you're saying. What's up, Dublin Marge on YouTube? Willard, a good leader makes those. Thank you. A good leader makes mistakes and then follows up with the right steps. I agree, but sometimes those steps are not available, right? Like a piece of this, and I'm not telling Jordan what he has to do. There are unforgivable crimes in life. Absolutely. And so it was always going to be up to Jordan as to whether or not this was forgivable or unforgivable. But if he chose unforgivable, and it sounds like it was, then there are no steps available. There are no steps available to go make this right. Right? So sometimes, like, part of being a good leader to someone is the willingness of those who are led. You got it, right? Like,
feels a little bit like a cop-out to me in this case.
Maybe, but you're a parent, and like, you can't just lead. There has to be a willingness. You got to get out of bed. You got to put the video game controller down.
It's different because I can snatch that kid out of bed I need to snatch up a kid.
But that can lead and has within families too. You know what? I'm out of here.
Sure.
And those relationships can be strained forever.
I had a sister with whom I grew up who ran away from home about 11 different times.
Okay.
Got funnier every time. She's usually back by dinner.
Exactly. Oh, wait, I forgot food.
She would run away from home, and by like the 7th time, I was like, Gail, I already packed a bag. Let me get the door for you. Sorry, Gail. Love you, sis.
Let's go to Vince in the city. Hey, Vince, you're on with Willard and Dibs. What are you doing?
Hey, I'm just driving home from work. But to speak to the last point you were making with Draymond on whether he's a good leader or not, I think he is a good leader. I think he does what needs to be done, whether it's a popular decision or not, whether it's a nice way of doing something or if it's kind of a rough and it is what it is kind of thing. Like he's the guy that on the team to be there as the enforcer, whether it's against opposing teams or making sure the young guys are in line. And I don't know, maybe the whole punch thing last year was just a whole big distraction because none of the guys really looked that engaged. And then as far as the podcast thing, I think Draymond's never really been in a position to have to be a mentor really to the younger guys because he's always had somebody else there to do it, like David West or Sean Livingston and Andre Iguodala forever. So I think it's just his first time where he really has to step in and really start trying to help coach up these young guys from a player perspective rather than just a coach's perspective.
I wonder about that, Vince, though, because he even says right there on the podcast, like he had to take that role over in like 2019. So I think for at least 4 or 5 years, he has had to take on that role. And that also means he had that role when they won it all. He had this role last year. So obviously he did something right. And the other part of Ric Bucher's comments that I really think we should highlight, I mean, he said it. I've been saying this for at least a few weeks. We got to remember that punch was not the start of this. Rick says that people were already fed up with Jordan Poole. Draymond took it way too far. but somebody was going to need to do something at some point. In other words, let's go back in time, pretend it never happened. Where was this going to go? Was it just going to keep bubbling? Was the season going to go better? I don't know.
Well, that's where real leadership would have taken hold, and you would have actually, as a good leader, you would have found a way to rein this young player in. If he really was this much of a problem, if Clay was already chafed and Steph was frustrated and whoever else was irked, here's an idea. If you're a good leader, lead. Take this player aside, have a veterans-only meeting, and pull the player aside and say, look, Jordan, these are the 7 things that you've already done that are making us frustrated. I don't want to have to knock you out, Jordan. My fist is already balled up.
I think that's quite an assumption to think that nothing like that happened, number one.
Well,
and
I think
number
it's an
two,
assumption to think that couldn't have been done short of knocking a guy out as a good leader.
Obviously, knocking him out was a mistake, but I think that's completely absolving Jordan Poole of any responsibility.
It's not.
Like,
it's not at all.
I'm not saying, like, in order to be a leader, you've got to set this meeting. Where do we get to the point of Jordan needed to be willing to be led? Like, imagine walking into a room with this kind of dignitaries are looking at you, and you barely can buy beer, and you've got the attitude?
Right.
Yo, I'm triggered by that. I'll be straight honest with you. That is a lack of gratitude that is stunning.
But that's where a good leader takes measures before having to lose your cool in October.
No doubt, but we don't know what measures were taken before that. That's what we don't know.
We know what measure was taken.
And it was a mistake, and no one says otherwise.
Which is why he's not a good leader.